Good morning and a warm welcome to this next chapter in our Level Up Your Customer Journey webinars series. Today we're going to go into our decision strategies part 2, where we're going to go into a little bit more detail than we did in our initial introduction in our first chapter of this Level Up series. My name is Jacob Fergerman. I'm sitting in our Copenhagen office. I'm joined by Jennifer Rowe, also in Copenhagen, and Gottfried Steiner, live from our Vienna office. We are also very pleased to have our own guest speaker, Sam Shepard from Core Bank, joining us to share some insights on how they use our strategy management tool in their everyday life. Before we go into the presentation as such, there are a few household quick tips that I'd like to highlight. As you can see on the screen, there's a chat box where you can also address some questions to us if you would like to raise some. You're also very welcome to put in some comments that we can discuss accordingly. And also, if you need a little bit more room on your screen to see the presentation, there's also a small arrow just next to the Level Up right-hand corner where you can minimize the chat function, and then the screen will increase in terms of how to see the presentation and the videos of us speakers. Also, you can see there's a zoom function if you need to increase the resolution. But without further ado, I'd like to go into the agenda and share some of the highlights we're going to share with you today. We'll start with Core Bank, have a discussion with Sam on how they use PowerCurve SM in their banking activities. Then I'll hand over the word to Gottfried, who will talk us through around explainability and machine learning integration. Then we'll move into the automated deployment and quality assurance within the tool. And then also in the very last chapter of today's presentation, we'll go into real-time data feedback and monitoring. And as mentioned during the housekeeping walkthrough, you will be enabled to ask questions to us, but also to Sam from Core Bank, who will stay online. So if you have any questions, I really encourage you to raise them in the chat box. Without further ado, I'd like to give the word to Jen, who will take us through the next chapter with Sam on Core Bank. Thank you, Jen and Sam.
Thanks for the intro, Jacob. As Jacob mentioned, I'm Jennifer Rowe. I'm a pre-sales engineer based in Copenhagen in Denmark. And today I have Sam Shepard with us from Core Bank. So Sam, maybe if you can just give a quick introduction as to who you are.
Yep. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Sam Shepard, and I work in Core Bank in the credit department, where we use PowerCurve, and I've been asked to go through how we utilize it here today.
Really appreciate you giving us some of your time. So we have quite a diverse group of people attending today from across the EMEA region, Sam. Maybe we could start by you giving a little bit of a background as to who or what Core Bank is.
Yes, so just a quick introduction to how our bank started and how it could be introduced is that our bank, Core Bank, is owned by a concern called Coop Amba, who also owns consumer good retailers through Coop Denmark. So it's the leading consumer goods retailer in Denmark. And they operate quite a few different chains, which is shown here in the slide. And through Coop Denmark, which is a member-based organization where the members pay into to being part of the goods retailers, we have quite a large member base, and that's why Coop Amba decided to create a bank, which was Coop Bank, to give some benefits to these members. So we started in 2013, just with the basic banking products. Today we have around 200,000 customers in Coop Bank, and we've expanded the banking products to quite a wide palette, recently introducing cooperative loans as well as housing and property loans. We are an internet bank, but use Coop Denmark's consumer good retailers the 1100 consumer stores around Denmark where customers in Coop Bank can actually deposit and withdraw cash as well. Yes, and we are around 70 employees in Coop Bank, I can add.
That's actually really beneficial. I think that you're able to make use of your physical stores, because it's a challenge that some of the pure internet banks face, is having no physical presence whatsoever. And
Yes,
it looks like you've grown it to be quite a sizable business too.
yes.
So maybe we could go on to then what the power curve solutions are that you have in place, and what's been your journey getting to this point in the bank with that power curve solution.
Yes, so today we use the Power Curve strategy management tool. Before I started in 2019 in the credit department, Experian did the changes, so we outsourced the part where we did the changes into the tool, the strategy management. Now we have it in-house, which means we can make changes on our own behalf a lot faster and adapt to requirements and regulations in a lot faster way. We have quite a simple flow. As you see here, we've got a flow for the product loans and a flow for the credit cards, which I've been told is quite a simple flow anyway. We also utilize experience, knowledge in developing scorecards. So within each flow, we've got a different scorecard that Experience have developed, and we build our rules and how we approve or reject customers around these scorecards as well. The scorecards are also monitored and developed further if changes, if the data shows that we need to adapt or change in any way.
Okay, simple is not bad.
No,
I think
I agree.
Gottfried will attest to the fact that quite sometimes overcomplicating solutions is one of the big challenges some of our clients face. So it's good that you're finding that even with a simple solution, you're getting some benefits. So maybe next you could tell us what are some of those benefits that you've observed in using the solution.
Yes, so credit counseling is quite a heavy resource used on going through a lot of the applications. So with the Power Curve strategy management tool, we do see that we've automated our process quite a lot. Besides this, we also adapt, as I mentioned, quite a lot faster to regulations from the Danish financial authorities, and building rules around this flow allows us to reject, refer, or approve applications on both new and existing customers on a larger and faster scale. So we've been decreased the number of resources used in the credit counseling team since introducing the Power Curve tool. Yeah, and then I can say another benefit is it's quite intuitive and it's easy to use, the Power Curve tool. I started in 2019 and had no experience within Power Curve and learned it quite fast. So that's another benefit that I would like to highlight.
That's really good to hear. We're always happy when we hear that our clients are, one, actually taking ownership of the tools, which is what we really like to see happen. And you saying that you found it intuitive and easy to learn is fantastic to hear. So thank you for that. I think another thing that you mentioned there really resonates for me, which is the legislation side of things. More and more in all of the region, we are seeing that legislation is complicating what has
Yes.
to happen in the origination phase. And it's really important that you have some kind of tool that can help you with that. So going forward, what has been your thoughts coming out of using the software? What are you thinking about in doing in the future with your decisioning?
Well, apart from keep our focus on automating our flows and applications through more rules or optimizing scorecards and through the data monitoring, we also had an introduction quite recently to another component called assisted strategy design, which I found quite interesting. And this could be a new tool that we could implement in Coop Bank in analyzing data and segmenting customers into even minor groups. So this tool looks at a data set put in and shows findings and insights towards maybe a target value. We could look at the bad percentage and try to find only the good customers within a specific segment. So this is definitely a thing we would like to get more familiar with and implement in the near future. The one thing about it is it takes time to prioritize data analysis in general. And our volume in data is still quite scarce, so we need to get more applications on the books and even more bad customers enabled to point out on a more precise note where the bad segments are.
We would look forward to actually working with you on that. And it definitely, you've actually mentioned something which we find quite common as well with a lot of our clients. And that is the challenge of finding time in your regular day-to-day process to step back and focus on something new. And getting data and making it available to use in those processes is also a common challenge. And interestingly enough, it's something I think Gottfried is going to focus on a lot in today's session. So Sam, thank you very much. Really appreciate you taking your time out to join us this morning.
Thank you. And if any questions are in the Q&A, we'll take them in the end, I guess.
If you don't mind, thanks. So just
That's
that
fine.
we can make sure that we do complete everything else, that would be super. So if you don't mind staying online, and we'll address any questions later.
I'd love to. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Sam. Back to you, Gottfried.
Thanks a lot, Jan. So I found this conversation very interesting because we heard basically three main points which Corporate Bank is looking into the future as well, is using assisted strategy design to get more insight in the data and into the strategies in order to further improve them. And I was quite impressed seeing here very simple strategies, as Jan mentioned before, is getting, let's say, with a very simple strategy, most of decision making done. It's not maybe as sophisticated and getting the everything out of what is possible due to scarce data right now. But in the future, there is, I think, room for growth, and especially using data. And in our today's topic, where we are trying to cover speeding up your decision strategies in order to maintain them, in order to test them, in order to roll them out, I think simplicity is a key factor as well. Because do you know if all the rules you're using, all the trees and decisions you're making, do they make a real difference to your business? And I think here assisted strategy design and monitoring is a very valuable tool for giving you lots of insight, for simplifying, for adding new decision-making components, and for making more accurate decisions, and for rolling out in a much faster way than you maybe do already today. Okay, then let's jump into the topic of today in speeding up decision-making. And I would like to start with a few questions. Let's first start with speed. And if you think about maybe your last rollout of a strategy change, how long did it take you? How long does it take you to go from a change from a specification towards implementation, towards testing, towards user acceptance tests, stepping maybe back, and finally deploying into the live environment? Is it a matter of hours, of days, or is it weeks or even months? So, of course, it's not only tool dependent, especially if it's about regulations. There are other departments involved as well, and the process gets more lengthy. But here, of course, we are talking more about the part of the tools we can make available or which you have in place. And one of the key points is, can you do everything mostly independent of the other departments, mostly independent of release cycles and IT department, which is maybe, again, slowing down the rollout process? Going to the middle part about data insight is, and what we just discussed with Sam here is, do you have data at your fingertips, for example, using assisted strategy design in order to have an immediate impact analysis and being very safe on what you're doing from a business perspective? Do you have the data right available from the production? Can you go use the data, let's say from today, from production immediately and get an insight if your recently rolled out strategy is working fine? So this is a topic we want to discuss as well. And finally, explainability and machine learning. In general, in terms of modeling, how long does it take you to incorporate a scorecard and test it? What about machine learning? If you would go with, let's say, Python code, R code, PMML, or H2O, is this for you as easy to integrate? Can you test it as easy? And can you even simulate the impacts as well if they make a difference to the existing models? All that together is the key factors where we think it's key for speeding up the maintenance process of strategies. And I'll show you today a few points where strategy management can help you exactly to tackle those issues and help you to speed up your decision making. So how does it usually work in the beginning? Let's assume we are deploying a machine learning model. So we get from the analytics department some code, which might be R code, Python code, or a PMML. And we have to take care about explainability as well, as we usually do with scorecards. So this needs integration and strategy management. This is the build phase. After this integration and building it, it's about rolling out into production. And that's number two. Can you do this automated? Are you already doing this automated so that you can deploy your strategies automatically, that you can test them in user acceptance test environment automatically, and finally move them? And this is usually not an automatic process, but just copy them in the production environment, which actually might be done by IT. And let's assume we're rolling out today a new machine learning model and it will go live overnight. And of course, we are all eager to see what happens in the morning if the machine learning model is working fine, what the first decisions are. This means we, from a business perspective, want to understand immediately if there is any need for a change or a quick reaction. So what we want to do is get the latest production data, real-time or near real-time, out from production, bring it into Power Strategy Management, and immediately review what's going on in decision-making. Is it working fine? Is it giving the results we're expecting? And can we still continue with the strategy, or is there a need for an important change? And if you see if there's a need for an important change, if deployment and testing is automated, you could change immediately, roll out again very quickly, and being safe that you're not messing up the system in production. Maybe just an example which should give you an idea through the next slides or topics I'm presenting here is that we have a client in Eastern Europe. They are doing automated testing and deployment each single day overnight. So this means no matter which strategies, if changed or not, they're always deployed overnight, they are tested overnight, and automatically before after tests are run overnight, and the quality assurance manager gets the result in the morning's mailbox, which is giving him an overview how many deviations they had, if the systems are still stable and more or less the same as the day before, and or to see changes where they are expected. We will dig a little bit more into detail in I think in the middle part here, because this is exactly where we can help you with automation as well. So to the first part, explainability and machine learning. So as I said, we assuming we want to integrate the machine learning model and want to explain it as well. Yeah. So what are the key points here in order to speed up the process and making sure you're delivering quality finally into production? First, it's about getting the machine learning model integrated. And we are talking about ingestion here, which means we are not implementing it. We are simply taking the code, loading it, and simply reuse and test it already. This means no recoding at all, no matter if it's a PMML, if it's a Python, R, TensorFlow, H2O, and so on. So we are supporting, meanwhile, a quite long list of machine learning platforms and codes, which you can integrate straight away and continue using them in your strategy. The second part is the local explainability. And local explainability is to explain a single decision. So if we have an applicant applying for a credit loan, for example, we have to explain why we reject this customer due to the bad score. We have to understand why the score from the machine learning or even scorecard is so bad. So I think there is no difference at all here between scorecards and machine learning. So we simply have to know why we are declining a person. The other way is the global explainability. This is more related to model creation, where we have to understand from an overall view, how is the model working, what are the key factors, as well as in reporting as well. We want to understand, of course, the distribution and what are the main factors why we are getting good or bad results. Yeah? But local means we have to be able to explain each single decision individually. The third part is integrated model execution. So as you saw in the first part, we are simply integrating PMMLs or Rs or Python code directly, but this means we want still to use it for end-to-end testing within PowerCurve strategy management and in the decision agent. And that's what we understand by integrated model execution. You don't care about the other environments, it's simply there. You can test it integrated, and I will show you then in a minute as well how this is going to work and how it looks like in PCSM. And finally, of course, everything has to deploy and run in production as well. And we have to make sure, of course, the right versions and access rights. So it's exactly the same as with all other components. They are versioned, they are audit proof, and you can step back to the previous version and nobody else outside can change it, neither in PCSM with the appropriate right, nor can you just remove, for example, a Python code from the production exchanges with another one, because everything has to go via strategy management and deployments here. So a very safe way to deploy here as well, and you have full control of the versions and knowing what's in production and know about your previous versions. I just mentioned before that it's more or less the same with scorecards, and here put together the ideas. If you implement a scorecard, you usually get, in most cases, a document from your analysts, and you simply implement them. This means you first do a direct implementation in PCSM, then you assign some adverse reason codes, the same way as you do for rules with reason codes, and finally you test and run some assisted design or simulation with your new scorecards and the overall new strategy. It's exactly the same with advanced machine learning models. It can be even traditional scorecards, which you simply get from, let's say, a SAS development environment, export it into PMML, and use it as a PMML without direct implementation. Just go via our ACE framework, which we call Analytic Component Extension, which is part of PowerCurve strategy management, and it allows you to simply load plugins which we make available to you. And if you, for example, make available a PMML Python H2O plugin, you simply can use them as you would use a scorecard object. This means you have these objects available, you load the data files, you create some explainability there. So usually they are called Shapley values. Either they're coming from the development team, or we have an option in PowerCurve strategy management as well, that you create them automatically inside PowerCurve strategy management. And the results can be sorted and mapped to reason codes as you would do for adverse reason codes and scorecards. And of course, everything is available for integrated test and simulation as well. So let's have a look then how this looks like. So you should see now my Power Curve Strategy Management Design Studio, and I'm open here a customer management strategy. And in many cases, we are doing some data derivations as the first node. Then we run a classic scorecard. So I maybe open that you know how this looks like. So this is a scorecard tree. We open the scorecard with 3 components and the score points. And here we would have the at-risk reason code, say they're left empty. So if you still have left them empty in your cases as well, consider using them in order to understand how you make decisions with your scorecards. So going back, then you see here for this demo a few different types implemented. You see here an H2O machine learning model. You see here a Tensorflow model. You see here a PMML model. And if I open, let's start with the PMML model here. And that's exactly the node which you have to implement, yeah? And what we are doing here is we are referencing here in the top line the model, the PMML model, so the PMML file. I'll show this in a minute. And once this is loaded here, we have to map, of course, the model names to our Power Curve strategy data structures. For example, we have here the logic name in PCSM, which is AP_age, and luckily it's the same name here in the model, AP_age, so we can automap it easily, which is already been done here. And we go ahead with all the other ones, and we can simply map the model names to our PCSM names internally. That's one task you have to do. And the other one is you have to load to import here the model PMML, which is just an import job. Once it's imported, it's reading in all the characteristic input, output values, summary, and so on. And this is exactly the same no matter if it's H2O or R. So we have the results here. And in PMML, we have the option here. You see here is a model document tab. We can load test data. This is 50,000 K of training data. That's what I loaded as well. It's a simple import job. And within a fraction of a second, it created an explainability model. And it's saying here, model explanation is generated. Which means we have here automatically created importance characteristics. Then we see some absolute number on age, on bank time, time with address, and so on. How much influence did this characteristic have on the score, on the resulting probability of default in this case, because we get probabilities back here. Yeah? And that's all you have to do. You're set. You see it's even faster than integrating a scorecard because you're not doing coding at all. You're just linking the PMML, you're loading the PMML, it's stored in the repository, and basically you're ready to go. And what I mean with integration is we can test it here, of course, as well. So I can open here an interactive tester, for example. And if I would key in here time address, say, let's say 23 months, age is 45, bank time is 23 months, employer time is 1 month, for example. And then those are the explainability characteristics and results. And the final one is maybe a tenant, it's a 1. And then just run the test case. And it's running through the PMML code. So this means there's a PMML interpreter behind the scene doing all this execution, and it's very fast. So we see the results here. We have our PD basically, which is defaulting 21% roughly. And if we try to understand why, we usually take the biggest absolute value here. It's the residential status. It has a SHAP value assigned with 1.1, and the next one would time with bank. So residential status is the key factor why my scoring is so bad. And this is how you can simply quickly integrate decision-making models, machine learning models into your decisions, test them, and feel very safe, and even include them in end-to-end testing. TensorFlow, for example, just that you see it's exactly the same look and feel. Data mapping here, in definition, exactly the same. We are just loading a zip file here, which contains all TensorFlow files. Yeah. So it's the same with OpenPython. It's the same with DataRobot, for example. So we are quite flexible here, adapt to your needs as well. If you have different machine learning platforms in place right now, just get in contact with us, because we are listening to our clients and we are still integrating further plugins. In terms of plugins, it's tools, plugins. We see here my installed plugins. So that's where you can check what's installed: OpenPython, DataRobot, PMML, Microsoft Machine Learning Server, H2O, and so on. And how is it working? You get either the downloads directly from us, so this is the best approach anyway, and then say add the plugin where you load your file from the resources which you received. Then they're listed here, and then you activate them, install them, and they are done here. The other thing which needs to be done is 2 files have to be copied to the decision environment as well, so that it can be then run in the decision environment without any problems as well. So, but then you're set. There's not much more to do besides some testing, of course, but that's basically all the preparation steps in order to get prepared and ready for machine learning. So back to my slides then. So I'll skip forward, because those of you slides I can share with you then as well, because that was just the demo I showed to you. Then the automated deployment. So let's assume we have now implemented the machine learning model and we want to do deployment and quality assurance as automated as possible, because I mentioned before, this Eastern European client is doing it on a daily basis, with another client going live on average 2 times per week, more marketing related, not with regulations models. That's where you need some automation, and you have to feel very secure and relaxed in order to go live so often. And that's exactly where automation comes in. Yeah. And it's about 2 points, I think, because first of all, if you're rolling out new changes, it's about speed, because if you want to react to market changes, for example, with assisted strategy design, you got some insight, you gonna make a change, you create a champion challenge and roll it out. You want to do it quickly in order to get quick feedback as well. Yeah. And the other thing is you have to feel secure doing that. So we have to make sure that quality is assured before you're going live. And if you do that automated, if you have confidence, you get confidence in that. If you do it more often, you get even more confidence, and you can refine your approach to roll out and automated quality assurance. So there's automated regression testing before deployment. That's number 1. So this is currently what you should be familiar with. This is the test projects we're offering here. They can be scheduled automatically as well, or you just run them and submit them to the job server. What is then a further step in automation is that you can automate deployment into user acceptance test environment, and this is made available in PowerCurve Strategy Management, as well as the third part here with automated regression testing, even in the user acceptance test environment. We have here tools available which can trigger this process as well, and even allows to compare before-after files, and even allows to integrate other tools you already might use for those purposes. And finally, it's about getting feedback as well from the automated test runs and seeing, are there any deviations? Are the deviations as expected? So the more you're able to automate on that, the faster you are with deployments, and the easier life is, and the more quiet nights you have. And of course, we all try to avoid sleepless nights before we are going live, and hope everything is working out smoothly. So the component which is doing this in PowerCurve Strategy Management is called the batch process flow. And it's used not just only for testing and deployment, but for other purposes as well. Yeah. On the right-hand side, you see the components which can be incorporated in such a batch process flow. On the left-hand side of this icons, you see deployment options, sanctioning and in the middle, you see, for example, a command executor in order to trigger outside copy jobs, starting other processes outside strategy management. You can compress files to a zip file, for example. Below, for our cloud solutions, we are pushing solutions to the cloud with the batch process flow. And on the right-hand side, we can extract data from the decision environment, which is the third part of today. So I'll show you then a demo on the batch process flow along with the decision store extraction. And you see we can send some emails or print some reports as well, or make some reports available with the batch process flow as well. And all that can be submitted to the job server either on demand, you submit it simply as you do your test projects, or the other way is simply to schedule them and do it on a regular basis, as the client I mentioned before, they are doing it overnight and each single day. Okay, and that's the example I mentioned before. It's a little bit simplified, but this client we just were discussing, they are using it the following way. Here there's a simple mock-up of the process in the batch process flow is. They are doing a deployment automated. After the deployment is done, they use a command executor. So they push the deployed files to another server where they're running the test. So this is pushing to the test environment. The third step is get test data. So they have even some batch scripts there as well, which are then copying test data from the latest test source to the test environment and preparing the data for making it ready for testing. And finally, they are running the test in the test environment. And this means it's running via decision agent directly inside, including all the machine learning models. And finally, they are doing before-after comparison, and then they publish the test results. They are doing it in an freeware tool, which is called Jenkins, where they're running the tests and create the results. And they simply put into a folder, copied into a folder, or sent by an email to the quality assurance management team. And this, as I mentioned before, is running each night, and each night you have in a folder and mailbox any unexpected deviations, and you see if your system and your strategies are stable or if you messed up anything in this process. Of course, this is something which requires some initial setup effort, but if you plan or if you do more frequent rollouts, it definitely pays off. And I know this from my first-hand own experience several years ago, where I built test projects, and I was always running regression tests even during changes. So I made a structural change, a regression test. I added a few components, another regression test, and step by step I made sure what I'm building makes sense and is not messing up the system overall. Okay, and coming to the last point, and I'll demo the batch process flow then with the last point together as well, is it's about real-time data feedback and monitoring. So assuming that you managed to roll out more or less automatically all your changes you did, and maybe we just did a machine learning model, as we said, and it's now about hoping that everything is working out fine. And in the morning, we want to see, of course, immediate feedback from production if the decisions are made properly. So what do we need for that in order to be so quick and get quick insight? So first, this means we really need real-time data and real-time data insight. And get the data from the production environment, and of course, ideally independently from IT. This means I, as a business user, want to have direct access to production data, and this is what our decision store is making available, because it's just designed for PCSM users in order to give full control here to the PCSM user, and not for each change you want to do there, asking IT if you could get more data, different data, or have to request data on a regular basis and wait until you get the data back. The third point is, of course, this can be automated as well. And of course, you can enrich data as well. Since we cover this in a batch process flow, there would be options in doing automatic for example, each night data could be pulled automatically and enriched with other performance data so that it's ready-made available for assisted strategy design or testing. Yeah. And finally, of course, you should use this data, or you can use this data, as I mentioned, in strategy design for testing, of course, but for reporting as well, providing insight to your team and even to management, and showing how well the strategy is performing, if there is any expected changes, and what needs to be changed in the future. Yeah, and we have in PCSM integrated strategy monitoring. Another option is meanwhile available as well, which is cloud-based, which we call Experience Insights, which covers quite some nice reporting functionality as well. So overall, of course, this helps to speed up your feedback cycle. So fast implementation, fast quality assurance and rollout, fast data feedback. This helps you to react to market changes very quickly. It helps you to monitor your strategies in a continuous way. And finally, of course, it helps to avoid risk and increase profitability. And if some of you might have participated in our sim risk challenges, and I think you saw from this challenge that if you use the data and the data insight and adjust your strategies and roll them out, for example, with Champion Challenger, and adjust again with a few cycles, you clearly improve your strategies by quite some amount in terms of batch rate or profitability. So let's go. Sorry, but again, that's the demo I show you. I'm not showing you the slides. So I'm now going to a different kind of demo system. In terms of running and creating a batch process flow and getting data feedback, there are just a couple or 3 steps necessary. So step number 1 is you have to tell the decision store which data you want to get dumped. Yeah, and we have a component here which allows you to simply flag the data. It's more or less a mapping. So we see here already that we mapped a lot of data, and that's all the standard decision-making data as the input data. We are mapping output separately, basically, in order to have 2 data sources available as CSV files finally. So we are simply mapping the data we want to get written into the decision store, and we are skipping other data which is not relevant. So if I want to add, for example, a temporary field like status here, I simply declare this as an output, and then I say map, and it goes to the output mapping, and that's it. That's how I map data, and that's how I create an annotation model, how we call it, that's simply flagging the fields we want to save and store. So once this is created, this needs to deploy it along with the strategy to the decision agent, so the decision agent knows which data to flag, yeah, and to dump to the decision store. So then the next thing is we have to set up a batch process flow, and that's a batch process flow. And you see here all the resources I showed you beforehand on the slide on the right-hand side. Those are the resources, and that's the decision store extraction we're interested in, and it's already here incorporated in the flow. And the only thing what you have to do is specifying here in the properties pane and saying what is the strategy name, and you specify it with the alias name. So it's post bureau strategy. It has the alias post along with edition number. So you have to know what did you deploy finally in your strategies, in your decision agent environment. Then we are saying we're just interested in the first 200 records. And then you say from which date to which date you're interested in extraction. You see just a single date. The reason here is because in my demo environment, I'm sure for this date, there is some data there. So if I go then to another data frame window, it might be that this has changed and I don't get any data. It's for demo purposes here. And I want to get input and output, and I want the file in CSV. If I want to change that, I could go to XML as well. Yeah. So, and that's the parameters you simply can change here. Once you have done that and saved that, you right-click and you can go to submit. If you want to do it on demand, you go to schedule if you want to do it on a regular basis. Yeah. So if I then say submit, it's submitting to the job server. I again have the option to override a few settings, so we are not doing that, and we are done. It's like a test project. You simply submit it, it goes to the job submission server, and that's it. Yeah. I now open my job submission server. Here, it opened already. Here we are. So just let's see. Let's go here. So this is the one I just, what is saying me? Pull data from decision store. Yes. So it's pulling the data. It pulled it. So that's basically how I get the results back. And you see already that my results are basically here. And we have export the input data as a CSV file. We have the output data as a CSV file. And we have here parameters, some information what has been pulled. Yeah. This is more or less the parameters we just talked about. And I can open here the file. And you will see it's exactly the format as we use it for testing, as we use it for assisted strategy design. It contains already the correct PCSM names and all the values we need. And we saw there were not 200 files, it were just a few test cases in this day available. And that's what we could use for doing the analysis in our strategy management. That's all which need to be done. As I said before, there's a little bit of a setup effort in the decision agent environment, but once that's available, you simply specify everything out from the PCSM environment. You define what needs to be flagged. If I want to change it and add more data, you'd add more data, you deploy it together with the strategy. And the next day, you can already pull the results with the additional data here. Okay, this would complete my brief overview of the three parts in speeding up decision-making and helping explainability. I would now, we share, of course, this brief overview, what I just showed as well as a demo. I'll now hand over to Jakob for managing the Q&A session.
Thanks a lot, Gottfried, and really appreciate also how you can help us all avoid sleepless nights with appropriate test protocols, and also appreciate how you went through the importance of speed and explainability in the decision-making process. It was very insightful, the presentation and demo. And also thank you, Sam, for sharing insights from Coop Bank. And that provides a good curveball to the next question coming from the audience. It's actually addressed to you, Sam, which is because you mentioned that your team at Coop Bank is around 70 employees. So I think that trigged the question from the audience in terms of how big is your team that is all managing the strategies on your slide?
Yes, thank you, Jakob. We're quite a small team. The credit department of Coop Bank consists of 3 people, me, the credit director, and my colleague Petra, who is the brain behind the changes, you could say, in our PCSM flow. What policy rules do we need to have to apply with the legislation, and how do we put the interest rates correctly due to scores and so on. And I make the changes in a more practical sense, and yeah, and have the power curve skill set.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Maybe just a follow-up question to that one, because Gottfried mentioned that we have organizations in Europe that is doing daily updates or even weekly updates to your strategies. Given the size of your bank and team composition, can you share a bit of insights, just very high level, on how regular you review strategies and update them accordingly? Because you did mention the FSA regulations in Denmark, and those who are not from Denmark or familiar with the context, there's some very, very strict guideline being in place since April, which forced banks to adjust risk policies very quickly and adapt to them within 24 hours, more or less. So maybe just a quick question to you, how you see it from your side on
Yes, well, very much dependent on how big the changes are. The time span of when we make the changes and when it's deployed in real time varies. But like Gottfried said, sometimes it can take months if we've got a very large number of changes and we need to walk through it all and set up our application flow and do all the testing before it's deployed. Other times, if it's a small change to a simple policy rule, or we build a new policy rule, we can deploy that quite easily. But yes, sometimes we need to adapt quite fast. But I think we're able to adapt in a reasonable amount of time, within days if we wanted to, and it's prioritized with the IT department as well in deploying it in the decision agent and stuff like that. So yeah.
Okay. Fantastic, Sam. Thank you. One final question from the audience is, in terms of using the decisioning solution across credit lifecycle, you use it for origination for new to bank. Have you considered using it for existing customers, but also maybe customers in a stressed situation financially in early collection?
Yes, so existing customers, we just actually with Experian started to implement that on our scorecards, so using behavioral score variables as well. And this is something we look further into in the future as well. And again, we're quite a simple small bank still. In the future, we will definitely look towards maybe using it in debt management if we decide to insource that at some point, or even implement machine learning, as Gottfried talked about now, to get a probability variable or something like that as well. So there's a lot of options in the PowerCube modules and tools. But again, scalability within the bank might trigger some more usage of the different tools.
All right. Thank you, Sam. Next question is to you, Gottfried, which is quite detailed on the versioning of the software. Which version do we need in order to have machine learning and decision store available?
In terms of the machine learning plugins, which we call the ACE framework, the analytic component extension. So the first time it was included is in 2.8, but if you're right now on 2.8, we despite that would recommend stepping to the latest version because we added some additional functionality even around the plugins, and for decision store this is quite recent. So for this we strongly recommend anyway going to 2.13, which is the latest version we are offering here, which gives you a little bit more functionality even beyond that. Yeah. And so having said that, at least 2.8 for machine learning, but ideally you have newer versions in place. And there is another option as well. So if you consider, and we are meanwhile offering our products in the cloud as well as a service, you could have a PowerCube strategy management and decision making as a service as well. And in this case, you would not have to take care about versioning because that's what we would do. And you would simply have PowerCube strategy management. You can do everything what you can do on your premise version, you can do it in the cloud, or let's say via browser version, via thin client. All the functionality is available and would make you more independent from your own installations and the IT departments, and even thinking about which version you're using, because this would be changed in the background.
All right.
I suggest in terms you're planning to get it integrated, get in contact with your local Experian contacts and plan on that, check the version and then just make a plan on what needs to be done and how to get started with machine learning, with the decision store and speeding up decision-making processes.
Great, thanks, Gottfried. That's a good point to make. We have another question from the audience in terms of, can you do UAT testing without cases entered into the front end system?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if we have, for example, a complete application process where you have screens, then of course you have to do some user acceptance test end to end. Let's say somebody has to key in data, or of course there are automation tools as well. So I know some clients are using complete GUI automation tools as well. They could be triggered here, and at least this part could be automated. But if it comes to newer changes, you most likely need somebody doing some manual user acceptance test. That's absolutely correct. But since it's not only about, let's say, the end, it's usually about the end-to-end process in user acceptance tests, yes, but not all processes have manual ingredients. If I'm thinking about, let's say, limit management strategies and a customer management setup, this is fully automated. So since it's fully automated, of course, you can do a fully automated test without any manual intervention here. And as long as some manual data capturing is involved, you always can do some sort of test, not end-to-end, but the first preparation step, and saying, are we ready to test manually already? This is helping. If you run a test, a regression test set, and by the way, regression test, we don't mean it as it's understood from the regulations and checking if the model is valid. We understand it by comparing it before-after results with quite a lot of number of test cases and doing it automated. That's what we understand by regression testing from a quality assurance perspective. And this can be done, ideally should be done automated beforehand, whatever you can do. And once this gives green light, you then invite your testers and maybe some persons from the branches, from the business lines, in order to test the front end application together with it. Yeah. So I think it's a step-by-step process. Automate what is possible. If this gives green lights, then continue with the manual parts in order to economize on everybody's time.
Many thanks, Gottfried, for that very thorough answer. And I don't see any more questions coming up. So I'd like to say thank you to Sam from Coop Bank, and thank you, Gottfried and Jen, for joining me on this session where we went deep into strategy management tool in terms of the usage and what are the details around using machine learning, testing, etc. A bit of finalizing with a commercial break. Next week, the next chapter in our webinar will be around our PowerCurve roadmap. And the final webinar in this series will be around artificial intelligence and our machine learning capabilities. And yeah, without further ado, I'd like to say thank you to you for joining us this morning. I hope it was useful and beneficial, and hope to see you next week again. Thank you.